It's the Awake Space Astrology Podcast, and I'm Laurie Rivers, your host, here to help you with some inspiration to get those aspirations out into the world. It's almost 6 a.m, and I am just finishing the podcast because it's been interesting trying to get this done. All manner of technical difficulties, from realizing I had my mic plugged in wrong because I had moved everything downstairs to do the solstice party with Mom, because there's just not enough space for us both to be on camera where I record normally. And when I was plugging in the mic to the interface, I plugged it into the second thingy. Anyway, and then my set fell on me, which happens at the end of the podcast. And I was just like, screw it. I'm not going to put up with that. But what are we going to talk about this episode? Well, we're talking about holding your consciousness, what it means to let go of outcomes, and how to know you're connected, okay, to the universe, to your guides, and understanding it's an expectation. We are all connected to the universe, to our guidance, that you're seeking it too hard. You're trying to grab it too hard without understanding it just is. We are at a subatomic level, connected to absolutely everything. Quantum entanglement tells us so. We are made of the same quarks and neutrinos and electrons and protons and everything else in between as the stars, as the rocks, as the trees, as the air, as the birds, as the flowers, and everything is connected, including us. And in Buddhism, they call it the illusion of separation. Okay, the illusion of separation, of believing we are separate from the cosmos when we are all part of it. And as this is Christmas week, whether you celebrate or you don't, one of the reasons there is a large belief of separation happens to do with the religious doctrine and dogma making us separate. And that goes way back to the Bronze Age. If you look at more indigenous culture, there's usually a connection to the earth. And that is our original understanding. We all have indigenous roots. Many of us have lost those. All humans believed they were connected to the cosmos and to the planet at one point. And we can come back to that, not by taking other people's belief systems, not by appropriating other people's cultures, but just by noticing our connection and stop trying to grasp at straws or think we need a Holly weird experience, right? So we talk about that. I talk about some of my own experiences, things I used to be a little shy to talk about because it made me seem very strange and odd. Not that I wasn't strange and odd to start with, but I was trying to lean into the genius part and not the, hey, I have weird metaphysical stuff happen. And yeah. So we talk about that. We talk about making magic this week with the Jupiter Saturn square. I am not re-recording this. This is like take 7. And how we can use the energy of that square to be creative. And I talk a little bit about an experience I had 25 years ago. Actually, 25 years ago, when I had a little 5-year-old girl who was just sure Santa wouldn't be able to find us because we had left everything she knew and everyone she loved except me, right? So we talk about that. I read from the gift of the Magi because I think it's a really appropriate story about being attached to things and outcomes instead of what's truly important. And maybe you had to read it in high school. A story by O. Henry, written in 1905, 120 years ago, in just a couple of weeks, right? 1905 to 2025, 120 years. How bizarre does that seem if you're over 40, right? People struggled with the same things then. The human experience hasn't changed a whole lot since the Industrial Revolution. And we're watching dynamic changes come faster and faster and faster as we move towards the year of 2025. It doesn't have to be scary. Change often is. Disruption often is. But if we can hold our consciousness, we can help make some magic. And we can certainly make magic in our own lives. And you don't need special crystals. You don't need extra potions. You don't need to chant the right phrases. Some of it you can do. You can do it if you want to. But you don't have to make your magic when you know you are the magic. And that's something that I really want to drive home this holiday week. So let's get started, shall we? Yeah. And of course, I read from what's in the headlines out of the Awake Space magazine, which isn't out yet. We're going to add January to it. I already put up a message to patrons, but the Awake Space magazine has been running late since November. And I thought, you know what? Let's just add some January there because you guys need to be ready. I've always done this to be of service, and I know you need the predictions, and I know you need those horoscopes. So stay tuned. They're coming out this week. You'll get the predictions, you'll get the horoscopes, and we'll get that magazine out before the 1st of January. And then we'll get back on track in February. All right. So it's just going to be wild and woolly, guys. Deep breaths, and may your set stay up. All right. Let's get going with the podcast. When you've done 365 takes in one night just because you hooked your microphone up wrong, when you moved it, yeah, that's what this recording has been like. Hey, it's kind of a crunchy week as we move through from the 23rd of December through the 29th. And that's what this podcast is all about. However, I'm going to talk about how you can make your magic this week because we have on Christmas Day, Jupiter square Saturn. Now, if you don't celebrate Christmas and you celebrate other holidays, well, happy holidays. And if you do celebrate Christmas, happy Christmas, Merry Christmas, wherever you are in the world. To me, it is a cultural celebration. It is less about religion and a lot more about family traditions. And for the first time since 1987, I am actually spending Christmas Day with my parents. Yeah, that's a long time. I have listeners younger than that. A lot of listeners younger than that. So I'm kind of looking forward to it. It's going to be low key. It's just the three of us. But it'll be sweet. It'll be nice. I'm going to make my cranberry sausage dressing. Dad's going to make some tri-tip and probably have some baked potatoes or something to go with it. That's a lot of carbs. Probably have a salad too. You know, throw in some greens. Maybe I'll make some Brussels sprouts for me. My parents don't really like them, but I do. So we'll see. But anywho, regardless of how crunchy this week will look on the outside and in the exterior world, it can be a good week for you. And I want to talk about making that magic. I know if you're having strained relations with family, if you're estranged, if they're estranged, if you're no contact, it can be really hard because, you know, you hear all the warm fuzzies and you feel left out and you know, going no contact is something that is so difficult. And it's something I did for years and years and years. And I needed to. It was important. I have no regrets. I do not feel the loss of time. And in some ways, it's why I can have a relationship with my parents because everybody needed to do their work. Everybody. And it wasn't going to happen as long as we were fighting and clashing on perspectives. Okay. It doesn't mean that everybody's changed their perspective either. But when you realize that your perspective is yours and you don't need anybody else to validate it, then you know healing has happened. And that's so, so, so important. And it's the hardest thing to learn. And it doesn't happen overnight. Everybody thinks, you know, healing can just take 6 months, a year. No, no, it doesn't. It takes time and experience like anything else and willingness. willingness, and you can't make anybody change. You're not going to win those arguments. That's why I did that funny roast that I posted up for free and paid members in the Patreon of the signs and how to distract the insecure version of the signs. It's pretty funny. I think you'll enjoy it. Yeah, you can join the Patreon for free. And one of my plans for 2025 is making sure I get a lot more free content out there. What do I think about TikTok going away? I'm not sure it does, but I'm also not convinced it doesn't. It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. I'm still looking for my TikTok chart. I drew it years ago. I'd have to, if I have to redraw it, means I have to go back and do another 12 hours of research. And no, I wouldn't share it. I'm not ever going to share the chart if I've done all that research. Not going to happen. But it could go away. It could. I think it won't necessarily on January 19th, though. So we'll see what happens. We'll see. I'm not convinced how much I want to do there, though, because it's become like, the shopping channel. So I prefer doing the podcast. The podcast is a lot more fun. Way more fun. So we'll see how that goes. Let me double check if my mic's picking up right. It is. So I had my mic plugged in wrong. That was fun. I recorded over an hour of podcast only to realize my audio was not correct. That was super spiffy. We did a solstice party in the Patreon, and my mom joined, and I had her tell stories about her life because she's had an interesting life as well. And I think she's a really good example that it's never too late. And you can evolve and change and grow and gain confidence. And so we had a nice discussion, and everybody, of course, fell in love with my Leo rising mama. So let me tell you, being the only water sign in a house full of fire and air was super fun. Super fun. Made for interesting dynamics, especially since they were all like a lot more gregarious than me. And I was like, I think I will just sit in my room and read. They'd be like, you can't just sit in your room and read. You need to do things. Even now. Yes. My mom will be like, I think it's on your day off, you should go outside. Like, some things never change. I'm like, probably should. You're probably right. All right. So what's up on the podcast today? So, of course, we're going to go through the headlines. I'm going to talk about how to make your magic. We're going to talk about resiliency and the need for resiliency in 2025. I've talked about this for years. In fact, the Mystery School is developed just to help instill resiliency and community building. And so it's important in 2025 to bring your energy in. And we've got just days left of 2024, and it's time to get moving and practicing. We've had some really great conversations in the Patreon chats. Some people have really, really shown the work that they've put in. One of the things that I'm most proud of out of 2024 is how many people have gotten a hold of me dealing with life. Okay. Big stuff, whether it's been relationships ending, job situations, successes. They've taken credit for their growth. Even though, they hung out in the Awake space. They may have taken classes with me or taken some of the coaching programs I've offered, had readings with me, been in one of the higher level tiers where they get more access. But they recognize they did the work. And that's something I'm proud of, because I don't want people to give me credit for their growth. I want people to understand the power they have over themselves. If I wanted to start a cult, I wouldn't hand people their power. I would accept it. I would be like, oh yeah, I made you grow. And I never do that. I don't want to do that. I think that's kind of icky and gross. I mean, it really does give me the ick when you get these wannabe cult leaders. These people have recognized the work they put in to make the changes they wanted to see in their lives. They've held their consciousness steady. I just handed them some tools. They learned how to use the tools. And that's power. When you can acknowledge your own growth, your own actualization, your own motivation and inspiration. And I want to hear that all day long. I want to hear that you did it. I don't want you giving me credit. I've been handing people their power back for a long time. Cause when people are like, give me hope. I'm like, I can't be your hope. You have to give you your hope. Okay. And needing a certain outcome to have hope, well, that kind of defeats the purpose of having hope. We live with uncertainty. We live with uncertainty every single day of our lives. Nobody is certain of anything. And if you are, you're probably selling something. And we're moving into some chaotic times. Like January 1st, 2025 is a very chaotic day because we have the moon conjunct Pluto in Aquarius and Mars retrograde in Leo is directly opposing it. And that's some pretty big energy. It kicks off a whole new era, and it's very destabilizing energy. It's disruptive energy, and it's global. It could be global political issues, but it could also be climate change. It could be big storms. It could be, Antarctic ice coming around. I don't think we're going to see the Doomsday Glacier melt. I don't think AMOC's going to stop running on January 1st, but we're certainly going to see the impacts of climate change. There's lots of scary stuff in the world. And the media only shows you that. They don't show you very many feel-good stories. They don't show you very many happy things out in the world. And when I'm doing mundane astrology, I'm picking up on the mundane, which is really a happy, skippy, joy time, right? But on an individual level, you can always make magic. And that's really what I want to emphasize as we head towards the 25th with the Jupiter-Saturn square. If you remember, we had the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in December of 2020, and everybody was excited. Oh, the great conjunction, which kicked off kind of where we're at now, because this is energy that rings out over time. And the square is very, very creative. Just reminds me of the TikTok sound. Everyone's so creative. And it could be like that. It could be everyone's so creative. But it can also be highly magical. And that's what I really want to emphasize in this episode. Because sometimes we need a little magic. So I still need to wrap presents for my mom and dad. And I've got them stocking stuffers. And it's been really fun. It's been really fun because kind of for the first time, I can really afford to get them like things I know they'll enjoy. And I don't just have to sit and make jams and jellies all summer or bake bread right before Christmas to hand somebody a basket. And obviously I haven't spent, because I said I haven't spent a Christmas with my folks since 1987 when I was 18 years old. And actually, no, it wasn't 1987. I was out of the country. Oh, shit. It was 1986 because I spent Christmas in Belgium in 87 when I was on my way to go to university in England. I went back to my host mom where I'd been an exchange student. So I had bought a one-way ticket to Brussels. And I spent Christmas and New Year's in Belgium. And then I got on a train from Brussels to Zeebrugge, got the ferry to Dover because I wanted to see the White Cliffs of Dover because I'm kind of a geek like that. And then a train from Dover to Victoria Station. That was really cool. That was like watching like All Creatures Great and Small on PBS with my grandma because there were like little foxes by the hedgerows as we Went through the English countryside. I almost missed that train. Yeah, I almost missed that train. I had to run to catch it, and the conductor or whoever it was on the station platform literally threw my bag onto the train, which it was super heavy. I don't even want to tell you how big that thing was. And then he shoved my butt as I managed to get one arm in, and he just heaved my ass up into the car. Oh, God. Oh, to be 18 again. And off on adventures and never coming home again. And little did I know, in 1998, I come back with 2 kids, $50, and not a lot else. And we made some magic that Christmas, too, because we came back in the end of October of 1998, and I had a 5-year-old terrified that Santa wouldn't be able to find her. And I've told the story of how I crocheted ornaments until my hands were wrecked. You know, they were just wrecked. I made lace and lined flannel and filled the flannel, you know, so like stockings and hearts. And I just tried to make anything that would light up my daughter's eyes. And then once I got the Christmas tree covered with ornaments, my daughter goes, "But we don't have an angel." I was like, there's no way in hell I'm using thread and making a lace angel the way my hands were just like curled up, because it was 2 weeks of just crochet solid. So we took a little walk from our house to the Fred Meyer's, because we were in Portland. And Fred Meyer's is kind of like think of like how Kroger's is, because Kroger's owns it now, but it had more than just groceries. It also had, you know, household wares and, you know, a craft section. And I grabbed some white red heart yarn and another crochet hook of the size I needed. And then we walked back home, and I crocheted the wonkiest, wobbliest angel you've ever seen, and embroidered a face on her and had gold thread, you know, embroidery floss to make a little halo. And my daughter decided she was the most beautiful angel in the world. And so I picked her up, and she placed the angel on the Christmas tree. And she still loves that angel. She's like, "Mom, that's the most beautiful angel." I'm like, okay. It was lumpy. It was lumpy because Mama's hands were tired. And, you know, at that time, it wasn't about stuff. It was the representation of hope, of better days, of less scary times, you know. Hope, you can't have hope in outcomes, you know, that your life is never going to be okay again if you don't get that job, or your life is never going to be okay again if you don't end up with this person, or if you don't get someone's approval, or you know, you do that. You're putting your life in the hands of an outcome. And that is no way to, that's life living you. That's life living you instead of you living life. You gotta let go of outcomes. You know, it's not just accepting any old thing. It's not lowering your standards. But if you are so single-minded that things have to be a certain way for you to be okay, then you miss a lot of life. You miss a lot of life. And one of the things my mom and I were talking about at the Patron solstice party, because my cute little Leo rising mama joined and everybody fell in love with her. One of the things we were talking about was, you know, there are times in life where nothing seems like it's going to be okay again. Like there's times where you can feel completely bereft. And a lot of times that's because you are attached to outcomes. And some of those outcomes seem really, really important. And they can be important. And it does feel like a loss if it doesn't happen, or if you don't get it back. Right? It does. And it is. And it's okay to grieve it. But if you put so much importance on that, you miss out on the stuff that's all around you. Okay. So, if you really want to make your magic this week, you need to be creative with your thinking. Okay, you need to be creative with your thinking. Just like I was creative getting ornaments on a Christmas tree. I didn't have a lot of money. And I wasn't going to waste it on electricity with the lights that I couldn't afford, or buying a lot of ornaments that I was just going to put away for another year. So I started crocheting. I had the skills. I used the skills I had. If I didn't know how to do that, I would have probably made paper chains. Everybody wants that hallmark vision, right? And it's not necessarily the thing that's going to make you happy, because it's an illusion. All right. There's a lot of money that goes into indoctrination in society of telling people how they think they should be and how they should live and what their relationships should look like, what you should accept and what you shouldn't accept. Listen to most love songs and they're fucking codependent. Yeah, you can live without them. You might think you can't, but you can. It is always a good idea to practice keeping your awareness tuned to what benefits you instead of counting your losses. You count your losses, all you're going to see is loss. You count your blessings, you're going to see it, even if you only have one blessing and 10 losses. Focusing on the blessing is going to bring you more of that, period. And that is not toxic positivity. It's not ignoring the losses. In fact, I've got a great example from a patron. We'll call the patron Jay. They posted in the Patreon, in the venting chamber, that they had an example of holding their consciousness. So their family, which includes 2 toddlers, were on their traditional trip to Six Flags. And on the way, they got hit. They got a car hit their car, and it totaled their car, but no one got hurt. Okay. Everybody was okay physically. And as Jay said, they might have nightmares about it because it's pretty scary. And they spent a couple hours waiting for police to show up and make their reports and getting everybody checked out to make sure they were physically okay, which they were. And then getting an Uber to the hotel. And their hotel wasn't that far of a walk from Six Flags. And so they got out the wagon, put the kids in the wagon, and had a really magical time. And their kids got to have the magical time. And that's where they put their focus. They said, we could have let the day spiral into the bad stuff, and they would have had every justifiable reason to do so, to continue the story of the bad thing that happened. But instead, they focused on making the magic happen. And that's what happened. They'll deal with the stuff tomorrow, right? It made sense. They're probably dealing with it today. Hey, Jay. I'm just calling you Jay and not your username just because I didn't get your permission, to share your name. But if it's you, go ahead, put a comment in the Spotify. And you didn't give me credit for it. I love that. You gave the teaching credit, but you held your consciousness and you acknowledged that. And to me, I'm grateful for that. That's not like, oh my God, it works. It works. What I teach works. Because beyond the tools provided, I want people to know they've achieved holding their consciousness. Only you can hold your consciousness. So congratulations on that. And given the circumstances, when you've got little kids in a car, wow, well done. That wasn't easy, because it's always easier to say it than to do it, right? People always act like it's so privileged to say to do that. No, it's not. It's based off experience. I can guarantee you, I know what my privilege is, but this has been an uphill walk in life to get to this beautiful alpine meadow I get to rest at for a while till the next jump in evolution. You never know what it's going to be. how do we deal with letting go? How do we make letting go of outcomes part of our habit? Well, first of all, you worry about how you feel. If you want to worry about anything, worry about how you're experiencing life in the body, you know? Again, if you're putting all your hope in a politician, you're always going to be disappointed, my friends. I don't care if it's AOC, her divine self, okay? Or Bernie, or everybody's like, I expected more. Well, why don't you do something with your life instead of expecting something out of somebody else? You expect one person to do all of that? Come on. It takes everybody being involved, as they can, per their capacity. Okay. And if you've been involved and you've given of your time and you've done all that and you have physical limitations, then I ain't talking about you. Okay. I have plenty of physical limitations. Again, the glasses aren't cosmetic and I'm actually fully blind in one eye. So I know all about it. There's always ways to do things. There's always ways to do things. Okay. You can support other people. You can mentor if you're done. Like, I don't want to volunteer with kids anymore. I gave thousands of hours of time volunteering with children. I don't want to do it anymore. But I'll mentor other people. I thought it was really weird when, like, my cousin was a La Leche League leader and the chicks, in their 60s and 70s were still running things. And it was like, move out of the way. Let the other moms do it. If you were leading stuff when you were young, lean back and mentor a minute. Give advice, but you don't have to run everything. Move out of the way. That's half the problem we have in this world right now is there's a bunch of older people who never mentored younger people. There's skill gaps, right? So if you are older and you've given of your time, mentor, move over. That's why at the mystery school, I don't run the meetings. There's a reason for that. I'm not there to be a charismatic leader, and I am very charismatic, and I did create it. And so what's going to happen? Everybody's going to want to go to the meetings I run. When I created it for everyone to learn how to facilitate and create community, that's going to kick off more and more as we move into 2025. Okay. Kirsten, my BFF, is going to be facilitating more meetings and not just being a facilitator, but, being some training wheels to help people facilitate meetings. She'll be there, but she'll be a guide on the side. She's an amazing coach. In fact, if you're looking for transition and life coaching, you can find her on Woke Astrology. You can book not a reading, but a coaching session with her. And if you want to know how magic she is, well, if you're in the mystery school, make sure you're at a meeting she's at, because she'll probably jump right into coaching and when somebody's in the hot seat. And you'll see what a magical, magical experience it is to be held lovingly by someone with her talent and ability. So I'll have her on the podcast. It's just wasn't happening this week because, well, this week is interesting. And we'll go through the headlines and But if you can let go of outcomes, meaning if I don't get a Nintendo for Christmas, whatever version of it is, then I'm a loser. Okay. We do that same thing. You'll be like, well, that was immature. Okay. So you felt like that at 12. But you do the same thing with, I didn't get that job. I didn't win the part. I didn't win the audition. My podcast didn't get 10,000 listens this week. Probably not. It doesn't happen every week. Sometimes we don't get what we want in the moment. And delayed gratification is a skill everybody should develop. Patience is a skill everybody should develop. I get so burned out by people going, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? I've told you everything I know. Watch it unfold. some of it, we're walking into a new era. If you're walking into a new era, then you're not going to be able to give exact details of what's happening because we're walking into new territory. Okay. No one alive has witnessed Pluto in Aquarius in action, just like no one alive witnessed Pluto in Capricorn in action, all the way back to Pluto in Cancer. Okay. Nobody saw those ever. And it wasn't just alive, but nobody in human history observed that energy playing out because it wasn't in our consciousness until 1930. You cannot use the outer planets to judge historical actions before they were in our consciousness. I don't know when they stopped teaching that astrologically. I'm sure the internet has something to do with it. Lord, that drives me nuts. It just drives me nuts. Just like astrology and astronomy used to be the same thing until the 18th century. And then they diverged. We still use astronomy and astrology, meaning the speed of the planets and their orbits. You need to know that part because everything moves a little differently and orbits operate differently. And that's part of how you interpret stuff. But drives me nuts. Oh, the YouTubes and the Facebook and people just being able to write good copy or be convincing or just have perky boobs, you know, or a man bun and a beard to make them an expert. Lord help us. I digressed. But anyway, stop holding on to outcomes. Let it go. You can have a good day, even if it looks like the world is burning. You could have the hardest year, and the most magical things can arrive. In fact, some of the biggest metaphysical experiences I have ever had were during some of the hardest times of my life, because guess what? That's when you need them the most. It is. I had a friend, well, it's a loose term. I had somebody who I thought was a friend years and years ago. This would have been back in the early 2000s. Well, I was telling a story of a metaphysical experience I had. And she came at me and she said, well, why don't I have those experiences? And I was like, I don't know. I can't tell you that. I can't tell you why I saw a 7-foot light being in my living room and it told me I was loved when I was having a temper tantrum. I can't tell you that. You know, I didn't ask for that experience. It scared the shit out of me. I thought I was going crazy. And the only thing I could think of is they wanted it so much. You know, like when you hold on to outcomes, like they wanted a goddess to appear or they wanted some, like, something out of the craft or practical magic to show up. I didn't. I didn't want it. I didn't want to be psychic. I did not want to be a magical energy worker. I loved being an astrologer because it was analytical. And yes, we do metaphysics with it, but it's more mental plane, you know, which felt safer to me. Pardon my Virgo South Node in the 10th house. Give me the analysis instead of my Pisces fourth house North Node, right? Which is the intuitive side. I was born psychic. Not just autistic. I think they go hand in hand, to be honest. But I fought it. I didn't want to be weird. I wanted to be normal. I gave up on that a long time ago. But 20-some years ago, almost 25 years ago now, you know, and instead of listening, she just let jealousy eat her up, you know. And it wasn't even like I was bragging. She just was asking me questions and I answered them. And I never understood it. because it didn't make me more special. And that's what I kept trying to tell her. I mean, just because that happened when I really needed it in hard times doesn't mean I'm better. It's just that's what showed up. And maybe it's because I believed. Because the temper tantrum I was throwing was at a God I believed in still at the time. A universal creative force. And my shit fit wasn't, I can't have things or I can't be this. It was, I have done everything you've asked. I've followed my guidance and you hate me. That was my temper tantrum. And I wasn't that calm. Trust me, I was banging my head on the floor. I was laying on the floor, banging my head. I was having a toddler-like tantrum, sobbing. I'm sure my neighbors thought I was crazy. And that was 1998. Right around Christmas time. Maybe just after, maybe just 99, early 99. Just losing my shit because I had tried and tried and tried. And nothing was working. And I was following my guidance. I was trying to trust. I was trying to live in my North Node, which guess what? Your North Node is a journey. It's a purpose that you are learning. It is mastery, which is not something you gain instantly. And trusting the process was not something I was good at. I was very good at planning and orchestrating and strategizing and analysis and making shit happen. And nothing was happening. I was like, I have done everything. I had children relying on me. And that's when that light being showed up. It said, you are loved. And I went, well, that's it. I've had a psychotic break. I'm going to bed and then I'm going to call my therapist in the morning. That was literally my reaction. I didn't go, oh, I am so special. I am so special. Nope. Didn't do that. I was like, nope, I broke. And yet in the morning when I was drinking my cup of coffee and my doors were locked, just an FYI, there was a figure and a hand touched my arm and I heard in my ear, you are loved. And I thought, ooh boy, that delusion is pretty strong. I'm going to really make sure I call my therapist. And I did. I called my therapist that day and I was like, okay, we need to talk about institutionalization. I'm now having auditory and visual hallucinations. And I think I just need to go into the loony bin. And he was like, no, actually, I think you're having metaphysical experiences. And I'm like, okay, fine. And then I called one of my mentors and I was like, okay, was that Jesus or an angel? Or just an angel? And he started laughing because you are literally the only person who would say just an angel. I'm like, well, there's grades of importance. He goes, I think it was a messenger for sure. Doesn't really matter who it was it? Letting go of the outcome. By the way, never had that kind of thing happen again. I never felt that desperate. And I was desperate. And it actually wasn't January. It was actually, I think, April. That's right. So it would have been April of 99, about a month before my Saturn return, which was a very metaphysical time. Just because that happened and it didn't happen for somebody else doesn't make me special. It doesn't make me a guru or a leader. That was a personal thing that I used to hide and not really tell stories about. In fact, she was the first person besides my mentor and therapist I'd ever told about it. And her reaction made me absolutely not want to talk about it with other people because they're like, why not me? Well, I can't tell you that. I don't know why not you. I don't even know why me. So I asked my mentor, why me? I know I'm not that special. I know I'm human like everybody else. So why did I see this and hear this and other people didn't? And he said, because you have faith. That's simple. You weren't saying I'm shut off. He said, you didn't have any doubt that you had a connection. You were angry, but you didn't have any doubt in your connection. There was no resistance in the connection. So a message could appear. Resistance skews the signals, and so you may miss the signals. And there were signals before that happened. Like I had 100 crows to 200 that would surround my house for real, and they would follow me. They would follow me all the way down to the bus stop, and like half of them would follow me into downtown. This was from like October, November of 98. It's hard to miss that many crows. Well, what was happening? The signs were strong. And sometimes we don't get that. Sometimes, and now it might just be the way the light flickers to get my attention, or a song that pops into my head, or a thought. I don't get big stuff like I used to, or big signs like I used to. I don't need them. I'm used to making magic in my life. I know I'm the magic in my life. I know the universe and I are deeply connected. So are you. But if you don't know it, and I didn't ask it for proof, I didn't ask. It just showed up. And that was a me thing. That part was me. But if you can let go of outcomes, that's when those things do show up, or your knowingness shows up. All right. And we can make that magic. We've got Jupiter in Gemini squaring off with Saturn in Pisces. And that means we have a clash of ideals. We have a clash, like this demanding of proof leads nowhere. That's the square. It's not going to happen. There's dogma versus structure. There's faith versus story. And you have to kind of rise above that this week. Let go of the story. Let go of the outcome. Create a better story. If you're having a shitty day, take a minute and stop. Just stop. Stop telling the bullshit story. Stop telling the one that is like, nobody likes me, everybody hates me, I might as well go eat worms. You keep telling that story, your life is going to suck. Especially this week. Whereas if you can look and say, this moment right now is more than I can handle on my own. I know there is more than me here. Okay. Because that's what I was doing when I was railing. I wasn't saying I wasn't worthy. There was an understanding of worth and value. It was, come on, man, bring it to me. You must hate me if I'm doing all of this right. Why am I struggling? Bring it home. And to say you hate me, you hate me, you hate me. And it was like saying Beetlejuice 3 times. And then that brilliant flash of light, and that voluminous, you are loved. That was huge. It wasn't not understanding my value. I wasn't feeling like, I wasn't negotiating. I wasn't, please, 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 I'll be good. I was like, no, I've been good. Where the hell is the solution? Having an expectancy without having an attachment to the outcome. Good things are on the way is an expectancy. Letting go of the outcome is not needing to know what's on the way. What good things are coming. You just know that they are. A closer moment would be like 2017, in the middle of my divorce year. I was brought down to my knees financially. Absolutely brought down to my knees. Nothing was working. And people would be like, well, what are you going to do? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. Right now, I'm going to take care of myself, and I need to switch my focus. And so I literally just stared at clouds for weeks and weeks and weeks. I just stare at clouds, just trying to stop the momentum of fear and worry and doubt, and just stay as zen as I could be. And people are like, well, what's going to happen? I'm like, I don't know, but I'll be okay. Well, how are you going to be okay? I don't know. I just know I'm going to be okay. I don't know what okay looks like. I just know I will be. I know I'll make it through this, and I know I'll be okay. I just kept everything else to myself. Any plan I had, anything I wanted, I just kept it easy. When you're like, have to know everything for your life to be okay, ends up not being okay. I learned that the hard way. Okay. I was 48 in 2017 with nothing. Nothing. I owned my laptop and my clothes. That was it. Until the divorce finalized. And then I got a small settlement. It was very modest. It was enough to be very frugal for a year. And then I healed up. And instead of getting the job and investing that little bit of money where everybody's like, you should get a real job, I'm like, I think I need to heal. And that's what I did. And then I went and got a real job in 2019, right before COVID started. And it was the perfect job. And I used that job as the stability to start a business again, because I had let go of my other business. I always kept reading astrology. I've always had clients. I was referral only. Period. Because mostly I didn't want weirdo clients. Because, man, my first, like when I first started, probably the first 5 years, I had the weirdest clients. They'd all be QAnoners now. That's why when I started my website, I was like, okay, we're going to call this Woke Astrology and keep those people away, because that's what I don't want. And the people who see Woke Astrology and smile and go, okay, that's a cool name, those are the people I want. People who are committed to evolving in this lifetime, people who are committed to self-actualization, people who are committed to being the best version of who they can be on a daily basis. That's who I want to help. I'm like, okay, they'll get it. The people who get it, and the people who hate it will stay away from me. And you're not here to help everybody. Just remember that. All right. I think it's time for some patron shout outs. I've given my sermon. That's how you make your magic. After patron shout outs, we'll do what's in the headlines. And then I thought I'd read you a little story. All right, it's time for some patron shout outs. Without patrons, there is no podcast. And I, for one, am very, very proud that this is a listener supported podcast. So thank you to every single patron, new, old, former, and present, and future. You can join the Patreon for free just to check out what's there. There's not a lot of free posts right now, but I did put up a really good astrology roast through the signs that for some reason or another, TikTok just hated it, and it was sat in review forever. Could have been my hashtags. They don't get sarcasm. But anyway, you might want to go just for that. But anyway, without supporting patrons, we don't have this podcast, and you have my eternal gratitude. All right, let's get the patron shout outs going. We've got Ragad, Peyton, Danielle, Cherry, Dina, Neen, Mid-October 76, Lindsay, Bella Dharma, Felicia, J Minty Fresh, Kim, Jenny, Christina, Sarah, Sunny B, Julia, Abby, Angela, Alexandria, Heather, Denise, Andrea, Abby, Paula, Patrice, Jen, Melinda, B, Lexicon, Paige, Heidi, KB, Travis, Libby, Danielle, Bridget G, Mia, Alex, Mary Lou, Ariana, Veronica, Gannon 14, Adva, Jay, Tiara, Jasmine, Brooke, M. Hellman, Melly, Isabel, Kathleen, Lauren, Kathy, Annie, Maya, Poem, Susan, Patty, Selena, Kate, Nicole, Comfy Cass, Josie, Ashley Seatbelts, Vanessa, Stacy 219, Melissa, Stacy N, Lynn, Jessica, Magic Hands 13, Mercurial Maria, Lisa, Allie, Aaron, Tammy, Stephanie, Mary, Kirsten, Sabrina, Lisa, Chrissy, and Angel, and Ola, Melody Ann, Jessica, Jules the Great, Jackie, or Jack Lee, Alicia, Leon King, Rachel, Jennifer, Marge, Karen, Elle, Erica, Lauren, Jack, Amanda, Rosalie, Carla, Black Disney Princess, Peachy, Michelle, Megan, Jose, Reverend Allison Burns Legrecia, Shauna, the new matriarch, Emma, Stacy, NN, Emily, Lauren C, Shannon, Aaliyah, Gladixa Divine, Francesca B, KM, Twisted Lilac, and JDTRS 76. Without you, this podcast doesn't happen. I always give shout outs to our newest patrons, so thank you so much for joining. I'm going to be putting out a special for anybody who is looking to join the Patreon. You can join at a special price if you sign up for the year, or you get a full first month at a discount. Check that out on Christmas Day. That would be December 25th, Pacific time. Okay, so sometime on the 25th, I will put that out as a post to free members. Alrighty, thank you so much. We're going to talk about what's up next in the headlines. You know me, I like to sandwich the news. So we talk about inspiring things, empowering things, motivating things, and I tell you what's going on in the rest of the world and what you can expect to see in the news. It doesn't mean it's happening directly to you. However, it is going to happen because shit happens. Okay, it's how we deal with the shit. You can turn it into manure and help grow things with it, or you can just sit and waller in it, and that's probably less pleasant. Let's take a look at what's going on in the headlines this week. We start the week with the moon in Libra. It's in Libra right now. Nothing is quite what it seems, and things are topsy-turvy with the moon in Libra. By the way, these predictions are coming from the Awake Space Astrology magazine, and we'll talk about the magazine in the next segment before I get to other things. But anyway, we've got big windstorms, typhoons, monsoons, just, and especially looking at Australia for that, Asia Pacific region, Southern Hemisphere. This could be with big lightning and hail and infrastructure damage. We could see winter storms in the Northern Hemisphere. We could see air traffic disruptions, mechanical failures of aircraft, both civilian and military, accidents on roads and in the air due to wind, weather, and mechanical failures. Public protests increase, fighting on the ground, excessive use of force and play. Remember, all of this is global. It's not just in the United States. We have 78 countries tuning in. So, you know, it's not going to happen everywhere all at the same time, but just keep your eyes out. Supreme Court or other high court judges, global or international court, could be in the news. ICC or ICJ issue new rulings or warrants. We could see surprise announcement, decree, or government act that shocks or surprises a nation. New information leaked about U.S. officials and or financial matters to do with an elected official. It could also be dealing with leaders of all kinds. That could be CEOs, etc. We can see public violence, mass shooting, stabbing, or issue with domestic violence. Politicians start changing their tune, rhetoric changes, and propaganda spins in a different direction. Issues with international organizations, the Commonwealth, EU, NATO, UN, etc. Air traffic disruptions and limited airspace. So I'm going to tell you, over the next couple of days, the air traffic ain't great. Global conflict escalates, could see action in Persian Gulf, Red Sea, in Iraq, Syria, etc. Remember, I wrote these before the Syria stuff went down in December. A scandal in the fashion industry or a luxury brand is in the hot seat. Rescue of a small child or a missing person, probably female. Satellites and communications disruptions, internet failures, or technical issues in general. Public protests increase, fighting on the ground, excessive use of force in play, noted violence in urban centers, increased aggression or expansion of conflict in the Middle East. There's some interesting rhetoric coming out of Turkey, and if you've been following me for any length of time, you know that I've had kind of my eye on Turkey. The moon is in Scorpio December 25th through the 27th. We have big weather with wind, snow, ice, rain, or fires growing due to wind. Australia, my eyes on you. But also the northeast and southeast. Keeping my eyes there. And I think California is going to get a lot of wet weather. And remember, I had a mega flood I predicted for California back in 2022 for 2025. Looking at the end of January through February for that one into early March. Hopefully I'm wrong about that. Borders see violence: Poland, Belarus, Hungary, Georgia, the country, Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, India, Pakistan, US, and Mexico. Cold case solved or missing person found or high profile case takes nation's attention. That's global. Issue with oil refineries and gas pipelines, platforms, oil production or pumping. Massive poisoning or issues with food poisoning of popular foods or holiday meals. Christmas storm, we could see a big accident or crash. We could see arson, power outage, different regions, busy news day. This is probably Christmas Day itself. Maritime accidents, attacks, piracy, insurgencies by sea, issues in the Persian Gulf, Red Sea, Straits of Hormuz, and Suez Canal, Mediterranean. We could see expansion of conflicts. This could be Navy issues. Biden and or Putin could face a political challenge. Increased tensions with USA and Russia, assassination attempts around the world, and this could be world leaders of any kind. Okay, so it could be politicians, it could be celebrity, but probably not celebrity as much as like very notable person or people. Political candidates, and again, people of note, so people who hold high status or are in the public eye. Big information leaks revealed or serious espionage allegations, mass accident, loss of life, or terrorist attack, accident at a theme park, or crash at a sporting event. This is global, not just in the United States. Food poisoning or illness. I'm saying there's a lot of food poisoning because it's like in here through, 3 times, which includes waterborne and foodborne illness. So cook everything thoroughly on Christmas Day. No raw stuff, okay? JFK Jr. has a crisis or bad news. Internet disruptions, payment gateway failures, hacking and ransomware, graveyards, cemeteries, catacombs, and mortuaries. We could see an increase in suicides. I hope not. Cold case reopened. Trucking or transportation accident, rail or shipping, etc. So that's the 25th through the 27th. And then 27th through the 29th, we have the moon in Sagittarius. We have forest fires, bushfires, lightning strikes, arsons. Fires go out of control because of wind. Unseasonable temperatures and temperature swings that could go cold to hot, hot to cold. We could see political violence, nationalism, right and left-wing clash, global. Actually thinking more about Germany and France on that one. Riots, protests, mass violence, announcement from religious leader. That could be the Pope. They're looking at a Jubilee year coming. So I don't know. I wrote this earlier and I wasn't really paying attention to Jubilee years. People keep asking me why the Pope's opening portals. And I mean, it's a ceremony. It happens during Jubilee years. Journalists, broadcasters, or news agency under the microscope, religious leaders or organizations under fire, maritime incidents, accidents, or issues in ports. Big international accident involves either people. I lost my place. No. Let's see. Big international incident involves either people from many countries or involves a border crossing. That could be at the U.S. Mexico border, but I'm almost wondering if it isn't like another issue with boats heading towards Greece or Italy. I wonder. Accidents with missiles and or satellite launches, stocks and money markets, crypto as well, unstable, and we could see financial corrections. Massive storm or issue to do with massive storm could be a hurricane or something that starts at sea and moves through more than one country. Doesn't mean it's a hurricane, but it has like big winds. It could be a bomb cyclone. It could be a nor'easter. It could be a monsoon rain. It could be Indian Ocean, Asia Pacific, parts of Australia, maybe South America, the tip of South America. It could be something like that. Biden could have a fall or an accident or a health issue, or Biden makes a big announcement. Don't get your hopes up. Supreme Court justices in the headlines or high courts in other countries. So, just judges speaking up, making decisions. We could see the United Nations, NATO, EU, and other international organizations having a crisis, and that could, maybe that could be World Bank, etc., World Health Organization, any global organization or international organization. International disputes increase, truces and ceasefires fail. We could see war expand. We could see Iran and Israel's conflict expand. We see transportation accidents, international travel disrupted, unseasonable temperatures again. So that gets us through Sunday. And then on Sunday next week, the 29th, the moon moves into Capricorn. We kind of started the month in Capricorn, and it switches to Aquarius on January 1st. So part of the day on January 1 is the moon is in Capricorn, and then it slides into Aquarius, where it meets up with Pluto and opposes Mars, making January 1 a very volatile day. We could see winter storms or strange temperatures, cold air blasts, or could see a quick rise in temperatures, failed governments in countries with coalition governments, death of a patriarch or monarch, not just the United Kingdom, international incidents in banking or trade organizations or agreements, violent rhetoric and calls for violence, announcement regarding military commander, admiral, or joint chiefs of staff. This could be any country, however they describe it. Financial markets unstable or correct. Military mobilization or troop deployments rumored or make the news. We could see a NATO crisis, could involve Turkey. Sorry, my glasses need to get cleaned. Trump on the brain. Issue with oil pipeline platform drilling operation at sea. Seismic activity increased up to 6.5, or volcanic action offshore. Leader deposed or coup d'etat of a world leader. Or a world leader dies. Again, that's global. By the way, it's not a great day for Trump. There's pressure on him as the moon moves towards Pluto on the 1st. So anyway, we could see a celebrity scandal or breakup. We could see a CEO, CFO removed from position by a board of directors or just removed. Accident on a mountain, landslide, mudslide, rockfall, sinkholes. bombing, terrorist attack, explosion of some kind, erosion causing storms, tornadoes, hurricanes, changing temperatures, thaws, freezes, or even snow in lower elevation, depends on the location. Julian Assange could be back in the news probably more later on the 1st, but sizable natural event could be a storm, earthquake, volcano, offshore, or impacting a shoreline. Tensions erupt in the Strait of Taiwan, and or we could see action happening in sensitive waterways, whether it's the Straits of Hormuz, Suez Canal, Panama Canal, Straits of Malacca, Persian Gulf, Red Sea, South China Sea. I find it interesting that the Panama Canal, I wrote these, end of November, and here they are, or early December. Anyway, before all this stuff happened. I always release the headlines. What I think is going to be in the headlines and the horoscopes before we get the magazine out, and good thing, because it's not done. We're going to add January to the December magazine. So we're going to make a kind of an omnibus because I really want to get people ready for January 1. And so I'm working on the magazine this week. I'm not in readings until second week of January. So I'm finishing the magazine before the end of the month. It's coming out hopefully this week. And then, and I've got articles from people I'm putting in. It's just, I got to write everything too. It's hard when I'm in readings, because that takes energy in a different way. It takes a lot of mental and emotional energy and psychic energy. And so it's balance. Do I bite off more than I can chew sometimes? Yes, I do. Will I stop doing that? Probably not. Probably won't. I just probably won't. So sometimes things are flexible, but I always get you the stuff I know you really want, and then you can enjoy the articles. Remember, if you get the magazine, you get all the back issues. There's a ton of good stuff in there. All right. So I thought I would end the podcast with something a little lovely, something you can just listen to, help you fall asleep, help you have some good dreams. So I'm going to read you a little bit of a story. How's that? Read you a little bit of a story and help you go to sleep. Because I know we all need our rest. Me too, because it's like 5 a.m. now. I am just now getting it done. Because it's this week. And notice, we're all doing fine. I'm not even all that tired, which is weird. And I have to go out with my mom later today. It's our girls' day. Every Monday is me and my mom's girls' day. And now for your listening pleasure, The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry. This was written 120 years ago. It's in the public domain, and I'm reading it off of Project Gutenberg, one of my favorite websites ever, that has a ton of public domain works available to read and preserve literature. The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry. $1.87. That was all. And 60 cents of it was in pennies. Pennies saved 1 and 2 at a time by bulldozing the grocer and the vegetable man and the butcher until one's cheeks burned with the silent imputation of parsimony that such close dealing implied. 3 times Della counted it. $1.87. The next day would be Christmas. There was clearly nothing to do but flop down on the shabby little couch and howl. So Della did it, which instigates the moral reflection that life is made up of sobs, sniffles, and smiles, with sniffles predominating. While the mistress of the home is gradually subsiding from the first stage to the second, take a look at the home, a furnished flat at $8 per week. It did not exactly beggar description, but it certainly had that word on the lookout for the mendicancy squad. In the vestibule below was a letterbox into which no letter would go, and an electric button from which no moral finger could coax a ring. Also appertaining thereunto was a card bearing the name Mr. James Dillingham Young. The Dillingham had been flown to the breeze during a former period of prosperity when its possessor was being paid $30 per week. Now, when income was shrunk to $20, though they were thinking seriously of contracting to a modest and unassuming D. But whenever Mr. James Dillingham Young came home and reached his flat above, he was called Jim and greatly hugged by Mrs. James Dillingham Young, and already introduced to you as Della, which is all very good. Della finished her cry and attended to her cheeks with a powder rag. She stood by the window and looked out dully at a gray cat walking a gray fence in a gray backyard. Tomorrow would be Christmas Day, and she only had $1.87 with which to buy Jim a present. She'd been saving every penny she could for months, with this result. $20 a week doesn't go very far. Expenses have been greater than she had calculated. They always are. Only $1.87 to buy a present for Jim. Her Jim. Many happy an hour she had spent planning for something nice for him, something fine and rare and sterling, something just a little bit near to being worthy of the honor of being owned by Jim. There was a pier glass between the windows of the room. Perhaps you've seen a pier glass in an $8 flat. A very thin, very agile person may, by observing his reflection in a rapid sequence of longitudinal strips, obtain a fairly accurate conception of his looks. Della, being slender, had mastered the art. Suddenly she whirled from the window and stood before the glass. Her eyes were shining brilliantly, but her face had lost its color within 20 seconds. Rapidly she pulled down her hair and let it fall to its full length. Now there were two possessions of the James Dillingham Youngs in which they both took a mighty pride. One was Jim's gold watch that had been his father's and his grandfather's. The other was Della's hair. Had the Queen of Sheba lived in a flat across the air shaft, Della would have had let her long hair out the window some day to dry, just to depreciate Her Majesty's jewels and gifts. Had Solomon been the janitor with all of his treasures piled up in the basement, Jim would have pulled out his watch every time he passed just to see him pluck at his beard from envy. So now Della's beautiful hair fell about her, rippling and shining like a cascade of brown waters. It reached below her knee and made itself almost a garment for her. And then she did it up again nervously and quickly. Once she faltered for a minute and stood still while a tear or two splashed on the worn red carpet. On went her old brown jacket. On went her old brown hat. With a whirl of skirts and with the brilliant sparkle still in her eyes, she fluttered out the door and down the stairs to the street. Where she stopped, the sign read, Madame Sofronie, hair, goods of all kinds. One flight up, Della ran and collected herself, panting. Madame, large, too white, chilly, hardly looked the Sofronie. Will you buy my hair? Della asked. I buy hair, said Madame. Take your hat off and let's have a sight of the looks of it. Down rippled the brown cascade. $20, said Madame, lifting the mass with a practiced hand. Give it to me quick, said Della. Oh, and for the next 2 hours tripped by on rosy wings. Forget the hashed metaphor. She was ransacking the stores for Jim's present. She found it at last. It surely had been made for Jim and no one else. There was no other like it in any of the stores, and she had turned all of them inside out. It was a platinum fob chain, simple and chaste in design, properly proclaiming its value by substance alone and not by meretricious ornamentation, as all good things should do. It was even worthy of the watch. Soon as she saw it, she knew that it must be Jim's. It was like him, quietness and value. The description applied to both. $21 they took from her for it, and she hurried home with the 87 cents. With that chain on his watch, Jim might be properly anxious about the time in any company. Grand as the watch was, he sometimes looked at it on the sly on account of the old leather strap that he had used in place of a chain. When Della reached home, her intoxication gave way a little to prudence and reason. She got out her curling irons and lighted the gas and went to work repairing the ravages made by generosity added to love, which is always a tremendous task, dear friends. A mammoth task. Within 40 minutes, her head was covered with tiny, close-lying curls that made her look wonderfully like a truant schoolboy. She looked at her reflection in the mirror long, carefully, and critically. If Jim doesn't kill me before he takes a second look at me, he'll say I look like a Coney Island chorus girl. But what could I do? Oh, what could I do with $1.87? At 7 o'clock, the coffee was made, and the frying pan was on the back of the stove. At 7 o'clock, the coffee was made, and the frying pan was on the back of the stove, hot and ready to cook the chops. Jim was never late. Della doubted the fob chain in her hand and sat in the corner on the table. Jim was never late. Della doubled the fob chain in her hand and sat on the corner of the table near the door that he always entered. Then she heard his step on the stair away down the first flight, and she turned white for just a moment. She had a habit of saying a silent little prayer about the simplest everyday things, and now she whispered, "Please, God, make him think I'm still pretty." The door opened, and Jim stepped in and closed it. He looked thin and very serious. Poor fellow. He was only 22 and to be burdened with a family. He needed a new overcoat, and he was without gloves. Jim stopped inside the door, as immovable as a setter at the scent of quail. His eyes were fixed upon Della, and there was an expression in them that she could not read, and it terrified her. It was not anger, nor surprise, nor disapproval, nor horror, nor any of the sentiments that she had been prepared for. He simply stared at her fixedly with a peculiar expression on his face. Della wriggled off the table and went for him. "Jim, darling, don't look at me that way. I had my hair cut off and sold because I couldn't have lived through Christmas without giving you a present. It'll grow out again. You won't mind, will you? I just had to do it. My hair grows awfully fast. Say Merry Christmas, Jim, and let's be happy. You don't know what a beautiful, nice gift I've got for you." "You've cut off your hair?" asked Jim, laboriously, as if he had not arrived at that patent fact yet, even after the hardest mental labor. "Cut it off and sold it. Don't you like me just as well anyhow? I'm me without my hair, ain't I?" Jim looked about the room curiously. You say your hair is gone," he said, with an air of almost idiocy. You needn't look for it. It's sold, I tell you. Sold and gone, too. It's Christmas Eve, boy. Be good to me. It went for you. Maybe the hairs on my head were numbered," she went on with sudden serious sweetness. "But nobody could ever count my love for you. Shall I put the chops on, Jim?" Out of his trance, Jim seemed to quickly wake. He unfolded his Della. For 10 seconds, let us regard with discreet scrutiny some inconsequential object in the other direction. $8 a week or $1,000,000 a year. What's the difference? A mathematician or a wit would give you the wrong answer. The Magi brought valuable gifts, but that was not among them. The dark assertion will be illuminated later on. Jim drew a package from his overcoat pocket and threw it upon the table. "Don't make any mistake, Dell," he said. "About me, I don't think there's anything in the way of a haircut or a shave or a shampoo that could make me like my girl any less. But if you'll unwrap that package, you may see why you had me going for a while at first." White fingers and nimble tore at the string and paper. Then an ecstatic scream of joy, and then, alas, a quick feminine change to hysteria, tears, and wails, necessitating the immediate employment of all the comforting powers of the Lord of the Flat. For there lay the set of combs, side and back, that Della had worshipped long in a Broadway window. Beautiful combs, pure tortoiseshell with jeweled rims, just the shade to wear in the beautiful vanished hair. They were expensive combs, she knew, and her heart had simply craved and yearned over them without the least hope of possession. And now they were hers. But the tresses that should have adorned the coveted adornments were gone. She hugged them to her bosom, and at length she was able to look up with dim eyes and a smile and say, "My hair grows so fast, Jim." And then Della leapt up like a singed cat and cried, "Oh, oh!" Jim had not yet seen his beautiful present. She held it out to him eagerly upon her open palm. The dull, precious metal seemed to flash with a reflection of her bright and ardent spirit. "Isn't it dandy, Jim? I hunted all over town to find it. You'll have to have a look at the time 100 times a day now. Give me your watch. I want to see how it looks on it." Instead of obeying, Jim tumbled down on the couch and put his hands under the back of his head and smiled. "Dell," said he, "let's put our Christmas presents away and keep 'em a while. They're too nice to use just at present. I sold the watch to get the money to buy your combs, and now suppose you put the chops on." The Magi, as you know, were wise men, wonderfully wise men, who brought gifts to the babe in the manger. They invented the art of giving Christmas presents. Being wise, their gifts were no doubt wise ones, possibly bearing the privilege of exchange in case of duplication. And here I have lamely related to you the uneventful chronicle of two foolish children in a flat who most unwisely sacrificed for each other the greatest treasures of their house. But in a last word to the wise of these days, let it be said that of all who give gifts, be these two the wisest. Of all who give and receive gifts, such as they are wisest. Everywhere they are wisest. They are the Magi. And what were the Magi? The Magi were astrologers. And my set fell down one last time. I'm not even going to put it up. So see, there's the movie Magic. Yes, I've been taping it up. I have the holders. I'm not going to use them. Not in the space. It's a small space. So we're getting there. We're getting there. I know you want me to be bougie. I'll get bougier. It'll happen. All right. I wish you a wonderful week. And I hope you find the wisdom inside of yourself to know that you are the magic. Talk to you next week.